Good morning, Prof. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. taking courses.
Yes.
Everybody's taking. So, but I just look at that master's.
Yeah.
On the long run, I was like, maybe if I'm looking for people, say that one more better. That's better. And then if I give you 5 or 3, I give another person.
At all.
The amount of problem.
Sorry, Joe. The class is about to start. It's already set up. Just for me to look for. Okay. Yes. Because the power is almost gone. Hey. Yeah. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Sorry that well, I'm not actually late here. This is 2 minutes to 10. Okay, so thanks for joining, and you keep the attendance on. Keep registering your name on the chat box. Once it's 10 o'clock, we will start. You can also reach out to your colleagues so that they can join as quickly as possible. Please stop your video if you are using video, because your video may take more of the gigabytes and you may be thrown out. That's one. Then it will cause distractions to others. Oluwatamilore, please mute your video. Thanks. So I'm going to share my screen. So that we can. So I believe you can see my screen now. I need you to talk back to me, maybe the class rep or someone. Can you see my screen, class? Hello, class. Please, can you respond back to me? Can you see my screen? Favor Odiete. Please mute your video. Adedoyin, mute your video. You can hear me, but can you see my screen? Can you see my screen? Unmute and let me hear you. Aro Shegbe Enoch, please mute your video. Benedicta Oduneye, your hand is raised. Can you see my screen? Okay, let me try to allow you to talk. Unmute yourself now. Can
Yes,
you
sir.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Yes, sir.
We can see your screen, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. All right. So this morning, we will continue on the course Introduction to Sociology, and what we will be looking at today is how sociology relates with other social science courses. In short, we are looking at sociology and other social sciences. Sociology and other social sciences. This is the outline that we will use for this class. I'll provide a brief introduction, then we'll look at the branches of social sciences, meaning the sub-disciplines that we have in social sciences, and then we'll look at the commonalities and the differences in each of those disciplines. We will then summarize and conclude. Please, at any point in time, you may raise your hand to ask questions if you need any clarification. So don't keep quiet, just raise your hand to ask questions, then we'll give you the floor so that you can ask. So at the end of this course, you are supposed to understand the core focus of sociology. You are also supposed to be able to differentiate between sociology and other core social science subjects. Also, you will be able to recognize the unique perspectives of each discipline on the society. Okay, these are some of the things that you will take away from this class today. So let's start with the introduction. Social sciences encompass disciplines that systematically study human behavior, societies, and institutions. We study human behavior, that is, the feelings and attitudes of people that drive their behavior. I mentioned feelings, your thoughts, your attitudes that dictate how you behave in the society. We can talk about individual behavior, we can talk about group behavior, even societies, right? They have their various behavior. That is why when you come to a place like Lagos, if you are coming to Lagos for the first time, they will tell you that this is Lagos. And that cliche has a way of shaping how you behave. They'll be warning you, Lagos is different from Abuja, okay? So each society has its unique way that they behave. Then institutions. We study institutions. Institutions also, I don't recognize Samsung. You have to rename yourself. Samsung SMAO75F. Your hand is raised. Please rename yourself before you can raise your hand. So institutions also are studied, like the military institution, political institutions, okay? The family institutions, all right? We also focus on that in social sciences. Again, when you look at the traditional definition of social sciences as the study of human behavior with respect to ends and scarce means, which has alternative uses, you realize that human behaviors or human beings, right, have many compartments, okay? And people say ends and scarce means, all right? So many compartments are there. We will begin to study how you behave, how you think. You cannot talk about social behavior in the absence of social interactions, in the absence of, human interactions, either interactions between adults and young population, interactions within family, interactions in workplace, interaction in religious places, and all of that. So we have all kinds of interactions at the societal level. Now, these interactions that we study, or the human behavior we study, is different from natural sciences. Now, natural sciences are sciences that we talk about physics, we talk about chemistry, mathematics, and all of that, okay? And natural sciences don't deal with human beings. They don't deal with human behaviors, okay? They deal with atoms, they deal with electrodes, electrons, chemicals, and all of that. And those electrons, electrodes, and whatever it is they deal with, don't have feelings in a way that are given to change. They have their own behavior, but their behavior, the behavior of atoms, electrons, electrodes, is static, is constant. Let me give example. Okay, I will come to you, Smart Oduaro. Just let me finalize with this. The behavior of all these elements that we talk about, they are constant. For example, water, right, is known as H2O in the natural sciences. And water is water anywhere. Salt, okay, is salt anywhere. You go to the UK, you go to America, you go to Europe, you go to India, you come to Africa, salt is salt, sodium. Okay. And that is why when a child has diarrhea, I'm sure that some of you will have some idea about this. When a child has diarrhea, stooling maybe for more than 24 hours, up to 24 hours, the doctors can recommend what is known as salt sugar solution. Okay, so they know the content of salt, the content of sugar, and the volume of water that you can add together and then produce a solution that will be helpful to the health of that child. Anywhere in the world, that solution remain the same, will do the same thing. But human behavior is different in social sciences compared to the behavior of elements. It is difficult to predict behavior. All the, social sciences discipline, right, has that, difficulty to be able to predict with certainty, okay, human behavior. And in fact, it is said that the most predictable thing about human behavior is that it cannot be predicted absolutely. Okay, so social sciences talks about, human behavior generally. And when we talk about these social sciences, we have sociology, we have psychology, we have geography, we have economics, we have political science, we have social work, we have communications, among others. So I'm going to take some time to look at, this core focus of the disciplines. Each discipline that we have in social sciences, we'll look at their definitions, okay, and then examine the main focus of each of the disciplines. All right, somebody raised his hand the other time. Is that person still on? Do you have questions to ask before we move on? Any question? Any question? Okay, Saidat, your hand is raised. All right, go ahead to ask your question.
What's the difference between sociology and psychology?
That is where we are going. So as we progress in this course, in this class, you will understand the difference between sociology and psychology. Okay?
Excuse me, sir. Please, good morning, sir.
Please raise your hand before you ask a question. Raise your hand first and foremost before you ask any question. I will need to invite you to ask. If you have a question to ask, raise your hand. Okay, for you to be able to raise your hand, look at the buttons underneath, at the pane below your device. You will see, where you can see symbols for interactions, and then you can raise your hand. Okay, Yusuf, go ahead.
All right, good morning, sir. I would like to ask if physical sciences is the same as natural sciences.
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, sir.
So let's move on from here. Thank you for those clarifications. Sociology, okay? Many people, including you, and many of you here today who are students of sociology, may not understand what sociology is all about. And of course, we don't expect you to understand what it is all about. But as we progress, particularly for those who are major in sociology, you get to understand that fully as we progress. But today, you have at least some glimpse into what sociology is all about. So it is the scientific study of society. Okay? We study the society. We study social relationships. Like I said before, we study social institutions. And also we study patterns of social behavior. Okay? For example, how structures like family and class influence individuals. How structures like family and class influence individuals. For example, in this class today, everybody belongs to a family. There is no single person who does not belong to a family. And who you are today, right, is the collective product of what you got from your family and the society. That is why a Yoruba boy will not behave like an Hausa boy. That is why an Hausa boy will not behave like an Igbo boy. Why? Because the environment in which he lived will have influenced him to be who he is. If a Yoruba boy born at the age of 8, born in Yoruba land in the southwest, and maybe at the age of 8, lives to grow in the east, he will behave like the Easterner because the environment will have shaped him. That is why you see some Igbo people in Lagos, born and bred, although they are of Igbo origin, but their language, way of life, right, will be similar to that of the Yoruba people because the environment will shape and influence him as an individual. Okay? So the main focus of sociology is to look at social structures. Now, when we look at social structures and we talk about structures, those social structures sometimes are not seen. Let's concentrate on that word, structure. Structure. When you hear structures, what readily comes to your mind is buildings, okay? You move in the society, you look at the environment, you see all these massive poles, you see MTN masts, okay? You see pillars, and you say that's a structure. You can see those things physically. But in social sciences, we talk about structures which are embedded in society. Most times you can't see them. You can't see them. But the fact that you can't see them, they influence your behavior. They influence our behavior totally. They influence our behavior. Just like you cannot pass through a wall because that structure will limit your ability to progress. The same way, those social structures can determine how you move in life, what you do and what you will not do. Social structure. For example, we talk about gender issues in society, which is relationship or interactions between, both genders, male and female. There is a structure of power issues. That is why in the family, you begin to see that although a male child may be the last born, a male child may be the last born in the family of 5, which means he has 4 other, older ones, but they are female. As he's growing up, he begins to assume some kind of authority because he's a male in the family. Now, the societal structure, okay, and expectations are what will shape that behavior because of the value we place on the male or the man child. So he sees himself as, I'm a man here. I play a critical role. And he grows up with that. And then collectively, we begin to talk about society that is patriarchal or that is male dominated. It's a structural issue, social structural issues. Okay, we look at group dynamics as well. No one particular group is the same with other groups, even starting with family. Your family is not the same as the other family, even though you are of the same size. I'm talking about number. Oh, the parents attend schools, similar schools, they will not be the same. And all of these group dynamics, social interaction, structural issues in the society help us to have, to move society forward, or sometimes may limit the movement of society, the development that we can experience in society. So, for example, when we talk about ethnic interactions in Nigeria, we may look at inter-ethnic marriage between Hausa and Yoruba, or between Igbo and Hausa, or between the Igbo and the Yoruba people. And you know that in itself begins to create a different kind of complexity. If you found yourself to be a child born to a family whose father is an Igbo and then the mother is Yoruba, they have their own advantages, but there are other complexity. Okay, that child grows up, with the problem of that social identity. Am I Igbo? Am I Yoruba? Yes, you can say from the father's perspective, because the father is an Igbo and the rule of man or male dominates, of course, you say you are an Igbo person. But when you get to some certain areas, for instance, as a male, okay, there are issues that are complex in that kind of inter-ethnic issues that sociologists are interested in. We are interested also in religious harmony, religious tension, community cohesion, solidarity. How do people come together as one to move the society forward? Those are the things that are of interest to sociology. Okay? The study of human behavior. When you look at psychology, I'm going to be faster now. Psychology explores the mind. Okay? Yeah, we're talking about behavior, but it talks about the mind. Looks at human behavior from the mental processes of the individual. Okay? What do you think? Now, the mind is something that is not even visible, right? To anybody. Is your thought process, your mental process, emotions, cognitions that are not totally visible, right, to man. And of course, like I said earlier, what you think about, okay, what you feel inside of you determines how you behave. If you feel good about me as a lecturer and about to feel good, you may want to turn up again in our next class. But if you don't feel good about maybe the way I lecture and my person, when SOC 101 is mentioned, you feel like, leave that class, I'm not going to attend because you don't feel good about it. Sometimes when you feel good about an individual, okay, your feelings, everything about an individual, you feel good about an individual, the fault of that person is almost obliterated. You can't find fault sometimes because you feel good. He or she does something that, others see as terrible. They judge that behavior as very, very extreme and bad. But because you feel good, sometimes you are almost blinded by that feeling. So psychology tries to look at that individual, mental processes, your personality, who you are, and the behavioral patterns that emerge from that personality. For instance, like we have here, there are various conflicts that have emerged in Nigeria that you may know of. Boko Haram, for example. Boko Haram has, in the northeast of Nigeria, they've destroyed villages, communities, ravaged, families, dislocated. Sometimes parents are killed, children are left alone. Some parents are slaughtered in the presence of their children, and those children live to see how their parents were slaughtered. That in itself, right, has a way of shaping the mental process of that individual. It's going to have a psychosocial impact on the children as they grow up. There's a way they see life differently. There's a way they begin to see even religion differently because of how they felt about what they have experienced. So your emotions are critical, your cognitions are critical, your feelings are critical, okay, in psychological issues, mental processes. These days, people talk about mental health. And it is a big issue. Mental health. Up until recently, people talk about the health of, our health as human beings. And what we know about health only talks about, well, you have malaria, you want to go to the hospital to treat them. Then some organs in the body might have issues. And we never thought about the mind, whether it is healthy or not. So the health of your mind is a big issue, right, in psychology. Those whose minds are not healthy, they tend to behave irrationally in the society. This is a Gen Z generation. I'm sure you are familiar with, children sometimes, or what they call maybe serial killers. They just go to a place and then begin to shoot. Some people are just rapists. They just go and do some things and they do it on and on and on. And when you look at them, you begin to realize that they are normal. They are not normal because of what they have used their mind to process. So your mind is important. And you can see now that psychology focuses mainly on mental processes, the mind. Sociology is not talking about the mind, although there's interconnectivity. We talk about harmony, cohesion in society, instability, that is sociology, but psychology talks about the mind and how it shapes your behavior. So while psychology talks about the mind, sociology, like I mentioned before, will tell you about socialization. How do we, bring our people to understand the rules of society? So we've talked about two of them, and I'll be fast because of our time. I don't want to take so much. Geography is the study of the landscape of the earth. Okay, talks about people, places, and the environment. The relationship between human beings and the environment. How do they interact? What are the spatial distributions? How are human beings distributed in space that we have on Earth? For example, Lagos State, okay, is one of the most populous states in Nigeria, including Kano. Now, these two states, geographers will look at their uniqueness based on the population size, and also they want to look at, the variations, how people are able to cope within the geographical space that they have. Environmental issues that could result from, the population that we have in those spaces. How can human beings manage their environment and the rest of that? So we focus on spatial patterns, human environment and relationships, regional variations, and the rest of that. They can look at crime. Geographers can look at crime. They can look at, resource conflict, for instance, in Niger Delta. Okay, the region of Niger Delta accommodates more of the oil reserve that we have in Nigeria. The oil reserve that we have in Nigeria. And because of that, there is conflict. Why? Okay, why? Because we have, as social scientists, we have come to discover that most of the countries of the world where you find oil reserve, just as we have in Niger Delta, in Nigeria, there is always conflict. So we can even map the areas of conflict, right? In Nigeria, for instance. And you discover that, places where we don't have oil reserves, the conflict there are limited. When you look at the Northeast today, talking about resource conflict, when you look at the Northeast today, you also will realize that Zamfara, which is part of the places in Nigeria or the states in Nigeria where we have conflict, Zamfara has its own resources. Gold is one of the reasons why the conflicts we have in the Northeast is not abating. People are mining gold as we speak. they are mining gold in some parts of Zamfara State, and bandits are there, artisanal miners are there, and they are taking all of that. And they are not taking it, in peace. They are using violence, because it will take violence to come into that space, which is Nigeria's space, and then go there and mine and take it out. You have to cause conflict. All right. So we have come to see that places where we have resources, we have conflict, but you cannot determine that fully if geographers don't go there to map. They can do spatial mapping, okay, using, for instance, geographic science tools to map the places where there are conflicts, maybe across Africa, across West Africa, or maybe North Africa, and then they now want to begin to see patterns. Oh, because we have gold here, okay, there is conflict. We have crude oil here, there is conflict. It can bring that spatial patterns out for you. That is what geographers are interested in. They look at weather, they can forecast the weather, how the weather is going to be in the next 6 months, okay, in the next 1 year, or daily forecast and all of that. And they tell us the regional variation of weather. Okay. That is geography. And it's part of social sciences dealing with human beings. Economics. Like I said earlier, traditionally it is defined as a social science which study to understand the relationship or the intersection, between end and scarce means, which has alternative uses. So it examines how the individuals, how businesses, how government and society allocate scarce resources. Talks about production, talks also about consumption. At the individual level, as students, you get involved in economic decisions. You practice economics. If your parents send money to you to do some certain things, part of that money will be allocated to buying data for this class. If your economy is poor, you may spend all the money you have on buying, other things. You may buy snacks, buy drinks, go watch cinema, and all of that. And at the end of the day, you have exhausted your money, then you don't have data to participate in a class. Economics. And I told you earlier that all the resources that we have, as economics will say, they are scarce. So you don't have resources that is forever. That is the main focus. And so you must allocate resources using your priority list. You will allocate resources using priority list. Needs that are very, very important are the ones you consider, most important that you have to allocate resources to. You do that at the individual level. You do that at the household level. Your parents do that. Okay. University of Lagos does that. Nigeria as a country will do that. There is no country in the world that will not practice economics. Okay, so they look at market performance because you talk about income, money, and that is why at the individual level, you have to go and work to make money, to generate income, and the income becomes your resources. You want to build it to make it more and more so that you can allocate resources. The more resources you have, the better your life becomes. And the more you apply economics, strategies and methods and concepts to drive your life, drive your business, drive your institutions, the better developed you become. Okay? So, economics talks about markets, talks about incentives, economic system, and so on and so forth. Oil revenue policies in Nigeria, and for instance, the impact of subsidy removal. Everybody felt it when government removed subsidy. Subsidy was removed, the price of things jumped to the roof, and there are some things that ordinary Nigerians cannot afford anymore. Why? Because of that oil subsidy removal in Nigeria. Economics will study that. How do we allocate these scarce resources? Why must we allocate it like that? When we allocate it this way, how will that allocation, yield to maximum, utility or profit? That is what economics is interested in doing. Now, social work is another branch of social science, and it is a practice-based profession. It's a practice-based profession that is aimed at enhancing the well-being of people and meeting their basic needs, especially or most especially for vulnerable populations, in Nigeria and other places. They are interested in enhancing the well-being of people and to meeting basic human needs, especially vulnerable population. They do this through advocacy and intervention. Social workers are people on the field, and they use practical advocacy and intervention, to enhance and better the lives of people. For example, we've talked about IDPs in the Northeast. Social workers will go to the Northeast or somewhere where we have, IDP camps, and they can begin to use advocacy and interventions to better their life, either at the individual level, as a group, or as a community. Okay? The individual level, some special children growing up, okay, requiring special care. Social workers can devote time to assist those children to live meaningful life, better life. That is their training, that is their profession, and that is what social work is interested in doing. Not only children, we can talk about adults. We can talk about people who are incarcerated in prison. Social worker can actually do advocacy and interventions for them so that their life, their well-being can be enhanced. Okay? Families or communities in crisis. When there is, for instance, natural disasters like earthquake, in communities, in places. Social workers can go there for rescue operation, okay? They can go there to enhance health, social well-being of communities, groups, and individuals. They can talk to government through advocacy. They can go to maybe states or federal House of Assemblies and do advocacy so that the plight and well-being of vulnerable populations can be recognized and actions can be taken, so their well-being can be enhanced ultimately. Okay, I'll take the next two and then I will pause for questions and some interaction. Political science is also another branch of social science. Now, that one is the study of power. Okay, is about power. It is systematic study of politics, government systems, political behavior, and public policies. You can see that also this one is different from what we discussed about sociology, psychology, social work, and geography. Each of them they are unique and they have unique focus and interest. Political science is about power. And power is your ability to make someone else, or a group or a people to do what they naturally would not want to do. If you follow modern trends, you see what happened between United States of America and Venezuela. US define every principle of sovereignty, went to Venezuela, pick their president. You adopted their president. The president of Venezuela will not ordinarily want to be adopted, will not want to leave power, wants to be president because that position is good. But politics, now in politics, they went there, adopted, took him away from that place, and they are going to, institute a different government. That's power. Okay? Political science in the study of power, okay, studies how this power dynamics is about how power is acquired. How do you acquire power? How do you acquire power? Okay? Some people acquire power through ballot boxes, that is through elections and all of that, every 4 years or 5 years, as the case may be. That is what we call democracy, because we're able to acquire power through the instrument of the ballot box election. In some other places, power is acquired through the barrel of the gun or a coup d'etat. Okay? Like in some African countries that we know right now, coup is becoming somewhat popular, acceptable. So when you acquire power through a coup, you become an authoritarian government, so to say. Authoritarian. A dictator. Why? Because of the process in which power is acquired. That's politics. Nigeria, as we speak, practice democracy. Every 4 years, there is election. There was election in 2023, and in 2027, there will be another election, campaigns and all of that. And in that election, power play will start to emerge. the power brokers, alliance and realliance, all of that, those are some of the things we witness in the study of power in political science. It is not just about how power is acquired, like I said, it is also the transmission of power. The transmission of power. In African countries, you see some president want to sit tight. And we have several examples of that. They want to sit tight. Even they came into democracy, they want to sit tight. They'll say every year, year in, year out, okay, they are in power. They begin to alter the constitution of the country so that they can remain in power. They don't want to transmit. In democracy, you are supposed to transmit power after 4 years, after you have done your term. And that is what Nigeria is practicing. Just a minute, please, a second. Okay, thank you. So I was saying that in Africa, there were countries that the president refused to just leave power. They don't want to leave the seat of government and they want to stay there until they die. You know, like Paul Biya of Cameroon, you know, since 1982. Even Uganda remained in power since 1986. Museveni. And that is not democracy anymore. Okay? The transmission of power, if it is democratic, should be every 4 years. So that you are not the one who knows how to do it all. Okay? So give room for other people to do. How do you transmit power? Then the last is, how do you use power? How do you use power? Okay, you use your power to, now the ultimate aim of power is to use it to benefit the masses, the people, to better their lives, to make things work for people. That is why power is given. Okay? So how each government use power, right, is something of interest to political scientists. And that's why you see commentaries about, you know, how Nigerian politicians are using power either at the state level, at the local government level, or at the federal level. They make policies. For example, the tax reform in Nigeria is an issue of the use of power. We want to make reform so that we can have a new regime of taxation, a new system. And people have been talking about all of that. Oh, it's going to benefit the poor. No, the poor will be taxed more. They will take our money and all of that. Politics. I will stop at that. And we look at mass communication. So mass communication is actually the study of how messages are created, transmitted, and received through mass media channels like television, radio, digital platforms, to impact public opinion. Now, people feel this may be just, is it not just how messages are created? No, the most important thing about, communication is you understanding what is being communicated, okay? So there are skills required to create, to transmit, and to receive all of those things. And people in mass communication do that through the media processes, audience effects, information dissemination, and using communication technologies. For example, I have here NSAS movement that happened some few years back in Lagos and was spreading to other countries. Okay, it was through the use of social media, digital platforms, that NSAS, mobilizers were able to convince youth generally to rise up and take their country back. Mass communication. Okay. Now, it is not only used for mobilizing people for social action. Okay. You can disseminate information, right? CNN is a platform for information dissemination. We see also NTA is a platform for dissemination. Channels in Nigeria is a platform for dissemination and all of that. So you see that all of these different disciplines that we talk about have their unique focus and emphasis. But however, it can be cross-cutting. Chinaza, I will give you floor soon. It can be cross-cutting, okay? For instance, people talk about political economy, okay? As political science study the use of power, we want to be able to ensure that our use of power, right, influences the economy positively. Because it's power that you use to allocate resources. Okay, you don't just allocate resources anyhow. If you don't have power, you might not be able to allocate resources well. And also, there is politics in communication as well. So what I'm trying to say is that all of these also intersect. They intersect. And we should have that at the back of our mind. So yes, let's take some questions real quickly. We spent an hour teaching. Let's take some questions and we'll have some interactions. Yes, somebody raised his hands recently, just now. Okay, Chinaza, all right. Ask your question, please.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Okay, so my question is, as a discipline, which one emerged first? Was it sociology or psychology?
Okay, thank you. Well, the question as to which one emerged first, right, is not the main issue here. Okay? It's not the main issue. What we're looking at is how they interrelate and their unique focus. I won't say whether sociology emerged first or psychology emerged first, but you will agree with me that sociology and psychology, they have some connections, and that's where we talk about social psychology. We talk about social psychology. Let me pause here to make one important and very crucial point. Social sciences, I would say, is one of the most powerful and most important discipline that we can never study. Although many times people don't realize the power in social sciences, and they think is less important, less viable than other types of sciences like natural or physical sciences. Okay? That's a fallacy. And the reason is this. Every other sciences that we know of, okay, either medical, physical, or natural sciences, they revolve around human beings. For instance, if you are designing anything, you want the aeroplane to fly. The aeroplane is not flying to space to remain there. It's carrying human beings. If you are designing atomic bomb, okay, warheads that have capacity, right, to destroy, it is human beings that will still operate those things. If you are building gigantic, maybe gigantic airspace or whatever it is, a stadium or an airport, what is the impact of those things on human life? That is the question. You can have those things built, but human beings can decide to use their rational thinking and evade them and not use them. You can talk about advertising as very important in mass communication. You have some products to market to people. If people decide not to buy them, okay, you cannot sell them. And that's why you say, let's advertise. Even sometimes if you advertise and people misconceive the products, you can't buy them. You can't sell them, I mean. So because we are social behaviors, we are rational human beings, right? We process ideas, and we don't just process those things. We process them. There is a little bit of instability in my internet, okay? So we process ideas, we process thoughts. We don't just process them. We make decisions based on the things we process. Okay? We are not like robots that are programmed. You can program robots to go and do some certain things, all right? And they will do them. But human beings cannot be that programmed with certainty. Okay? We have intuitions, we have our mind, we have our will, emotions that we can use to think and rationalize to decide whether to take or to reject whatever is being passed across to us. Okay? So sociology, psychology, right? They have their own area of focus, but they are also interwoven, as we can see. So I'm not able to tell you, oh, sociology came first, is of no relevance, or psychology came first. You know, they are all working together to understand human behavior and to be able to make life better for human beings. Okay. All right. Tima, your hand is up.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Make it quick.
So my question is this: what is the relationship between social psychology and political sociology in shaping voting behavior and political participation?
Come again.
Okay, what is the relationship between social psychology and
Okay.
sociology in shaping voting behavior and political participation?
That's the research topic you are just giving me. Social psychology. You understand? Of
Yes.
course. That's a very brilliant question. All right. Very brilliant one. When you look at, I will give examples to answer your questions, examples that you can relate with. Look at our politicians in Nigeria, for instance, they begin to do their campaigns, all right, appealing to the sentiments and emotions of people so that they can vote for them. In the last election, I'm sure that you people are old enough to understand what went on. There are different actors who came out to campaign and all of that. And the campaign strategy of every political actors, right, will be driven by psychology. What appeals to people more? And I tell you, it is what appeals to people more. The man who understands what appeals to the people more,
I'll get more votes.
that will get more votes. All right, that will get more votes. It's not just about let's bring facts and all of that. Your facts might not be in sync with the psychology of the people, with what is going on in their mind. And we can discuss and discuss around this. For example, in Nigeria, Nigerians are tired
They
of
always give them palliative.
please, one person speak at a time. Nigerians are tired of oppression. They are tired of corrupt governments. Okay? They are tired of no lights. They are tired of seeing money and reading money on the pages of paper. It doesn't drop. It doesn't translate to anything. Anybody who comes and talk about that, you know, in his campaign, how we can make things better, you know, is most likely to gain the sentiment of the people and then have the votes swing, you know, to his direction. So that is psychology and politics. So they are interwoven. And that's a good example of how we see the interrelationship between all these disciplines, okay? Thanks for asking that question. Michael Orisumibare. I'll take 2 more questions. Michael Orisumibare.
Yes, sir. Good. Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. So my question is a little about what you said earlier about social psychology. Sir, can you hear me clearly?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, sir. So this is my question. So you said that social psychology is like where sociology and psychology intersect. And you said something about a question the lady asked that social psychology like helps shapes political processes, like how people perceive politics. Like, okay, if somebody is doing an election, people care about what appeals to them rather than the fact that the politician is trying to spill. My question is that is there a way that people can be socially engineered so that like people like see the fact for what it is rather than what appeals to them, something like that, like with the help of social science?
You're more objective.
Excellent question, Michael. Excellent
That's
question.
all.
I'm going to meet everyone now because excellent question, Michael. The use of that concept of term social engineering is the goal of social sciences, actually. It is possible to socially engineer the society, okay? In psychology, there is what they call operant conditioning theory, okay? I think by Pablo. And what that says is when you reinforce a behavior over and over again, when you reward a behavior over and over again, you give some incentives and you keep doing that thing over and over again, you discover that when that reward is withdrawn, eventually you will have been programmed. It becomes an habit, a behavior that you can't refrain from practicing. And that is because in psychology, okay, the human body is part of what they focus on. And you know that the human body has its own attributes, part of which is that, okay, it is adaptive. It can adapt to every environment. So whatever social environment you create, for human beings, they adapt to it and they live that. Let me tell you, of a fact that colonialism, okay, that is white man's invasion of Africa, was not without some form of social engineering. I mean, they came to Africa over a period of time. They made us to abandon the food we were used to eating, the names that we were bearing, the clothes that we were known for, okay, the culture that we used to practice, and we started embracing what they had. That was some form of social engineering. And that's social sciences. That is why I don't know if there's a book that as an undergraduate in the university, then I was made to read and review Social Sciences as Imperialism by Claude Aki. Okay, so is some form of, if you read that book, you see how we were socially engineered. That today you prefer to watch your Premier League in Europe than to watch your local league. When you give birth to your children, you like to give them Harry, okay, Jennifer, than giving them local names. When you want to go to parties, you prefer to wear designers' wears than what is locally sewn or woven. Although that is changing gradually, all of that process as well is a form of social engineering. And psychology and social sciences and sociology and all of that, I mean, they are all tools that we can use to socially engineer, our society. But unfortunately, social sciences have not been taken that seriously in Nigeria to be able to bring about the social engineering that is required. When you look at the social problems of Nigeria today, okay, the social problems of Nigeria today, a lot of people will agree with themselves that it is a social problem. It is a problem of values. For example, values placed on education, educating the young mind. What are the values? If you place high values on education, the facilities that we have, the remuneration we give to those who are working in that system, the accommodation facilities, the curriculum, the investment, the funding into that sector, right, will take priority. But you realize that that is not the case, okay? I don't want to go into so much details because we are not talking about all of this in details. We're just giving introductory, so I see many hands up. I'm not inclined to taking all because of our time, but let me take Gift or Nomwe. Please unmute yourself. Unmute yourself, Gift. And
All
ask your
right,
question.
thank you, sir. Sir, I just want to know the difference between anthropology and sociology.
Oh, good. Anthropology is not part of what I put up.
Yes,
Yes,
sir, but
anthropology.
it's in a PDF, sir.
Okay. Okay, thanks. So we have talked about sociology. Anthropology is very vast, but it focuses on cultural elements of the past. Okay, it could be the culture that you can see, observable or non-observable culture, tangible or intangible culture. It can also talk about the relics of traditions. Anthro is talking about humans, the human species. Okay, we begin to look in anthropology is culture, but it looks at the historical aspects of culture, the past. That is what anthropology is more focused on. It can even focus on relics of the past, on ancient civilization. For instance, in Nigeria, you want to look at the Nok culture. You want to look at maybe even the political system, the traditional political system in Nigeria, how power was used, and ancient civilization in Africa. You want to look at, okay, the naming ceremonies or marriage ceremony traditionally. How was it practiced? Is there a change between what was practiced in those days and what we have now? So we can talk about cultural anthropology. Some people want to look at culture. So now there's a thin line though. There's a thin line. That is why you see I could have said anthropology/sociology. In some university in Nigeria, you find anthropology and sociology together. In some places, they are separated. Okay? Anthropology, I even talk about physical anthropology. I mentioned cultural earlier. Physical anthropology, in which they can go and dig up, ancient geographical space to look at what existed in those places before. Okay, like people will go in Egypt, they go and look at the tombs of the pharaohs, all those ancient civilizations and their writings. They want to look at writing. So there is physical anthropology, there is cultural anthropology, there is cross-cultural anthropology, and all of that. So the difference is that, which is very, very, thin, so to say. One is looking at modern trends in social behavior, and the other one is concentrating on the past, social and cultural issues that are almost forgotten. Okay, that is the difference. Let me take one more question and then we can conclude our. Okay, we have two hands. Okay, Ismail, go ahead. Latif. Then afterwards, Michelle.
My question is, are there some situations where sociology techniques are employed to create facts in science science world or something like that?
Absolutely. Brilliant question too. Ismail, which department are you?
Economics.
Economics, okay.
Yes, sir.
Brilliant question, okay. In fact, nowadays, the physical and natural sciences are collaborating with social scientists, right?
Yes,
To
sir.
be able to make life more meaningful and better. So you begin to hear something like human-centered design, or you hear something like co-creation and co-designing. In the co-designing itself is something that emerged from the physical sciences, engineering, architecture and all of that. And of course, natural or medical sciences. But when you design something for human beings, like I mentioned before, you have to understand who they are, how they want it. You cannot just sit down in your office space and begin to reason about what people need, how they need it, when they need it. So you must interface with them. Nowadays, almost, if not all, the technologies you find around you, they may be cars, they may be your phone gadgets, your laptops, okay? There is a dimension of the human design aspect that is interacting with human beings to be able to know how this thing work or how it can work better. So you have to bring social scientists to interact with human beings to know how technology can work better in order for them to make another model, okay, that can serve people better. And the changes that you have seen in technology over recent years, where you begin to have different models and different versions and all of that, is primarily because, interaction with people. Social sciences methodologies to interact with people, focus group discussion, survey methods, apply to understand human feelings, human perspectives, okay, understanding human perception about technologies, for those technologies to go back to their laboratories and then begin to redesign things that will meet the requirements of human beings. So that intersection is becoming increasingly very, very popular. As a sociologist myself, I apply technology, okay, to understand, human behaviors. And at the same time, I want to design some technology to help alleviate some suffering. I will have to understand how they want it. So in medical sciences, in physical sciences, all of these are in place to make sure that the technology that human beings are using are human-centered in nature. Okay? So your question is very, very apt and excellent. Lastly, I will not take Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle. Please, Latif, put down your hand. Michelle. Okay, let me unmute. Michelle, you can go ahead.
Okay, so sir, I wanted to ask, you mentioned a book earlier. It was called Social Sciences and something. I didn't get that, so I just wanted to ask what the name of the book was.
Okay, let me put it on the group chat in case some of you will want to get and read. Social Sciences as Imperialism. Social Science as Imperialism is by Cloud Aki. Oh. I'm supposed to post to everyone. Okay, Social Science as Imperialism by Cloud Aki. That's it there. So you can read. So yeah. So let's look at commonalities and differences. Psychology versus social work. Psychology will treat human or individual trauma. They look at individual trauma, for example, PTSD from Boko Haram. Okay? Whereas social work will apply group interventions. Okay? Social work or social workers will apply group interventions, to enhance the well-being of those people in IDP. In other words, both of them can actually work together. Like, if you bring a psychologist to a camp, IDP camp, so that they can fully understand the post-traumatic stress disorder that these victims or these vulnerable people are going through, he can provide some solutions which a social worker can actually use to create intervention to help those people in IDP camp. All right. Sorry, I have to mute everybody now. So, so the commonalities you see there is they have therapeutic skills, but for psychology, for the differences, psychology is research-oriented and social work is action-based. Both of them want, right, the well-being of these people in IDP to be enhanced, to be better. So they use some therapeutic skills, but the difference is that psychology is research-oriented, social work is action-based. All right. I will share this the slide with you, with your class rep, so that you can have it. Now, geography maps environment impacts, e.g. desertification in Kano. We talk about the Lake Chad Basin drying up and all of that. Political science examines responses, to federalism debates. Okay. Political science can also talk about the effect of those environmental impact and desertification. How do we mitigate them? Geographers will map and tell us, the desertification issues, the impact and all of that. Political science can examine the policy responses to those desertification. So commonalities, spatial governance, okay? For instance, Nigeria herders farmers clashes highlights both of them. When you talk about herders farmers clashes, you look at the Lake Chad Basin drying up. More than 60% of Lake Chad is gone. That is gone, and the river is shrinking every year because of you know, what do you call it? Climate change issues. And so herders will have to look for places where they can get, you know, green vegetations and water to feed their cattle. So the migration is down south. And they come into different territories, geographical areas, with different cultural issues and all of that, which will create some clashes. And not just cultural issues, there's also economic considerations in that, because the farmer is mainly planting and producing so that he can have market and sell. Livelihood is involved. And so in recent time, you hear that food prices have gone up. Is because once there is either farmers clashes, the farmers are not able to go to farm. There's shortage of food, and economists start talking about inflation, food scarcity, and people go back to government and they say, hey, government is not trying. The food is, let's open the borders. Let them bring all of that. Now, these are some of the things you find as interactions between different aspects of our social sciences, commonalities and differences. Economics and sociology, okay? Economic, okay, analyzes oil revenues, for instance, talk about oil revenue allocation. They use those principles and all of that. Sociology studies social effects, like militancies in Niger Delta, and the effect of maybe that oil revenue on families, on groups and institutions. Now, commonalities, both of them will apply statistics. They will use survey methods, but the difference is that economics is on market and sociology is maybe on inequality and the outcomes that comes from that, you know, allocation. So, in summary, as we move to conclusion, okay, let me, before we even go to, let me ask a question before we go. I stated in this class that one of the core challenges of social sciences is in its ability to predict human behavior absolutely. Okay? Ability to say, when you see A and B, then C is coming up. In the natural physical sciences, that is their hallmark. But in social sciences, we are unable to absolutely have that predictability. Why do you think this is so? Why do you think this is so? Janet?
Okay, yes, sir. Good day, sir. Good day, everyone. I think we have been able to establish so far that in sociology, we study different social contexts that lead to different outcomes in human behavior. To some extent, we're able to do that. But I think we're able to predict human behavior in general because there are different nuances that we still haven't fully discovered what their impacts could be on each single or on each individual. For example, if I am a girl raised in a multi-ethnic family, like my dad is Igbo and my mom is Yoruba, what I would experience outside, if maybe we're in the higher class or something like that, what I experience might be different from a boy who um is raised in a multi-ethnic background, comes from a middle class family, and goes out into the world. We'll have different experiences, and what those experiences, even if we had the same experiences, what those experiences will do to us, um, based on our different nuances, would not exactly produce the same things that, would not produce the same reaction, so to say. So I think that's the reason why, sir.
Okay, thank you. Great. Yeah. Who next? Let me try to see your hands. Talabi Halia, unmute.
Okay, so sir, I think that the reason why we're unable to predict human behavior right now is because as humans we are different in our way of thinking, in our way of everything. So I think that's one of the attributes or qualities that makes it unable to predict human behaviors right now.
Okay, thank you so much. For example, predicting our voting pattern. If you bring 5 people to come and talk about who will win the next election, there will be different, predictions about that. And you'll be shocked that maybe at the end, none of the predictions will work. Oh, they'll say this will win, given this permutation and all of that. Along the line, a coup may even happen. Don't say I say that to, it's just class, so I don't know anything about coup. That will not bring any of the people that have been predicted to come up. Okay? Why that is the case is what we're talking about, not only in political science, also in psychology and sociology. All right. Joshua Febua. Unmute and tell us, okay, he's not ready. Ismail Latif.
So, in sociology, people are limited by the society, and every society differs from each other. So their way of thinking also should also affect it also. Yeah. That's what I actually think about it.
Okay, thank you. Good. Victor Snow.
Sir, I feel that human behavior normally is supposed to be rational, but there are like in different factors that affect the way we behave. And I feel like all social science and everything that we study cannot track every single factor that can affect how a human being will think. We can give our assumptions, we can give what we think or what, but we can't really because we cannot see through the eyes of every single person. So we can't really know every single thing that can affect the way a person will behave. So that is why a prediction might not be actually accurate.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we stop at this point to take questions as we begin to wrap up. I would have loved us to have a more robust discussion on some issues, but let me state this because of our time. Like I stated in the beginning, that you see the plane flying and people can go into the plane entrusting their lives into the hands of the pilot, that the plane will take off, go into the air, defy the law of gravity, and then fly over some thousands of kilometers, over 32,000 miles, above the sea level, and then arrive at a place safely and you all come down. Is the work of science and the trust that people have in science. That once I slot in the key, and I press the right buttons, this plane will fly. Or once I slot in the key, I press the right button, this car will move on. What we are using to communicate right now, to have a class, is science. The predictability involved in this natural of physical sciences is what makes them to be able to come out with products that can enhance your work or your work life. So I know once I have the right parameters and I come into the Zoom space with my mobile phone or with my, laptop, I can have people, I can communicate. That is science. And the reason why that is because the elements that they use, that they have to study, okay, they are predictable. You can understand their behavior. That was why I gave the example of salt and water earlier. Even air, which is carbon dioxide. If you take a balloon and you trap some air inside of that balloon, okay, and you now throw it inside the river, the balloon will come afloat. It will always stay on top of the water. Why? Because water and air, right, are not compatible in that sense. Air will always find itself to the surface of water, cannot be retained underwater. And that is why those who are swimming, now science, when you are inside a swimming pool or in the river, they will tell you, don't struggle and don't, start breathing. Just hold your breath in there. You stay afloat. As long as you have air in your system, right? And you are holding your breath in there, you stay afloat. You can take in air and retain it again, you stay afloat. That is science. We've been able to apply all of that to make life better, to understand how human beings can even manage their environment. But as for human beings to study us, the cultural differences are huge. Individual differences are huge. Even you, as an individual, there are things that you experience now that will make you cry. Tomorrow, you experience the same thing, you will not cry, you laugh. The same situation, the same condition, the same circumstances, the same event that caused you to smile yesterday, okay, is what caused you to laugh today, to cry today. That is at the individual level. You now bring 10 people into that place and apply the same thing. They will not all respond the same way. They will not all respond the same way because of these cultural differences, individual differences, socialization differences, and all of that. We think differently. And that is why till today, when you talk about group revolution, like Karl Marx predicted, that the group will go and revolt and overthrow, it is not so possible for everybody in a group to think alike. And so you cannot predict the behavior of people absolutely, but you can describe it. You can tell. For example, as we wrap up, for example, we do know that people who have education, high education, maybe secondary, tertiary, university education, who have university education are more likely to give birth to fewer number of children compared to those people who don't have education. That is the truth. That is a fact, I mean. That is why you see that people who are more educated, who have more money, who live in better environments and all of that, They may decide to have just 2 children, 3 children at most. But people with less education, they don't have more money, they don't have the resources, but they have more children. They can have 6, 7, 8. That is a fact. But that is not to say that amongst people who are more educated, who have PhD, who are professors, you see, find some of them having 8 children. You see, that is the degree to which we can talk about predictability in social sciences. Why? Because our behaviors cannot be the same all through. All right. Our behavior cannot be the same all through. And that is why we talk about different, social sciences discipline, and that all of the social sciences discipline, they share human-centric goals. They are human-centered. All the goals that we have is to make the human being to be, well-developed and to ensure their well-being. As we look at social interaction, okay, we look at resources allocation, okay, we look at mental processes, we look at, interventions and policy development for people. All of this is human-centric in nature. And each discipline has a unique focus and emphasis, but altogether, social sciences provide a holistic lens to understand the diverse outcomes associated with human behavior. And like I said, one of the main weaknesses is the inability of social sciences to predict human behavior. We are still evolving, and hopefully with people like you, as you grow, develop in social sciences, you'll be able to even predict human behavior more perfectly. Okay? Thank you so much for your attention in this class today. I'm particularly thrilled by the type of questions you ask, which shows that you follow the class, and hopefully you will be able to replicate this in the exams. Thank you so much. Okay, Chisom, your hand is raised. Let me entertain that question. Yes, you are muted. You have been unmuted. Okay, Chisom, thanks for the claps.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, good morning.
Sir, not like a question, but I want to know if this class is recorded and will it be shared to us or like slides?
Yeah, the class is recorded, and I'm sure you will get the recordings. And I have the slides. Once you have the recordings, you have the slide because everything is there. Okay, but I can share the slides with the coordinator for onward transmission to your class. Okay. Thank you so much. God bless you. Please attend the next class and don't take things for granted with your classes because attendance is compulsory. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
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 Thank you, sir.